So next up, we have Athena Hoeppner, who will be speaking about the content platform migrations work, which is coming together right now. You're on,
Well,
Athena. Thank you.
thank you. And thank you for having me today. Good afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are in your time zone. I am going to be talking about content platform migrations. And the reason I'm the one talking about it is because I am the co-chair of the Content Platform Migration Working Group. I'm also the co-chair of the NISO Information Policy and Analysis Topic Committee, which is the topic committee that this working group reports to. So there we go. I clicked twice there and it didn't go. So I was worried for a moment. So the reason this came around is the usual situation for these sorts of standards or work groups or any of the work that NISO does. There was a problem that sort of needed a solution. So this is the setting that initiated the formation of this working group. Migrations are happening very frequently, and I did an informal survey at the very beginning of thinking about creating this, reaching out to librarians, asking how often they, well, not just librarians, reaching out on the electronic resources and libraries list, asking people to report how many migrations they had experienced in the last 3 years. That was 2016 to 2019 at the time. And libraries reported that there had been 30 migrations that they told us about. Content platforms said, I think it was something like 10, and publishers reported, I think, 5. So there were a lot of migrations, and they involve a lot of inherent complexities just for the fact that you're taking a whole bunch of content, you have to deal with the metadata, the content itself, and move it to a new platform. You also are looking at a bunch of stakeholders involved, and sometimes those stakeholders aren't immediately obvious. People don't think of them all right away. So the people who are migrating the content may not consider all of the significant technologies involved or the stakeholders that they should reach out to. And that leads to some failure to communicate key points or to resolve some technical issues that could be resolved with some forethought and knowledge. So problem-free migrations were a rarity rather than the norm. I'm not saying that all of them were awful, but they usually had some hitch. All right, so the work idea, a work plan idea is born. At the time, Kimberly Steinle, I apologize, I always get that wrong, and I were both on the Information Policy and Analysis Topic Committee, and we thought this would be a good idea. So we discussed it, and these were a couple of quotes from the time. I'm not going to read them out, but we both felt like this would be a good direction. So we submitted a work proposal, and these are the phases of a work proposal in general. And we had phase 1, the idea. We proposed a work item. We submitted it to the topic committee, and the topic committee did agree to it. They said that's a good idea. So we moved forward to create the work item and to get a roster. And I was really, oh no, of course the dog's going to bark right now. I was really heartened by the response. We put out a call for people to maybe be part of the working group, and we had so many responses from all across the stakeholders. There were statistics providers, platform providers, publishers, of course, librarians, and it was really a nice large group. It was so many that we couldn't accept everyone. So we ended up with a nice selection representing a lot of stakeholders, of very knowledgeable people, and we got to busy creating our work plan. And then draft 4 is where we've been for the last year and more, drafting the actual recommended practice. And then we'll move on to those next steps later. So getting to work. This is what we set out to do. The goal of the work plan or the work item is to develop a recommended practice that will help normalize content platform migrations. And it really focuses a lot on communication. And it's a recommended practice. It's not a standard. So we're not telling people, we're not really nearly as detailed as a standard would be. There's no infrastructure behind it or anything. This is considered opinions and expertise from people put together in a way that we think will help people do a better job of handling migrations. Is what it comes down to. To get to this to achieve this goal, we reviewed a whole bunch of the previous migrations, the communications about them, the plans, the timelines, both from emails that we had seen, but also from a lot of the publishers and content providers that were on the work group. Then we identified the stakeholders, we reached out to people, did interviews and so forth, surveys, and we identified and reviewed a lot of relevant standards that seemed like they were good ones for us to model or going to be relevant to the work involved of a migration. And then, of course, the drafting process. Um, that took a lot of back and forth, and we had a very active group that we split the work up, and a lot of people would say my expertise, it leans more towards metadata, I'll write sections on that. My expertise is more about linking technologies, I'll write about that. So we divvied up the work. And at long last, you're getting a sneak peek of the recommended practice. Here's the table of contents, and you can see, of course, it has an introduction, and then the main sections deal with linking the actual content migration, dealing with accounts, how to consider usage statistics and migrate those, and then a whole section just on communication. And then we have several appendices that give additional details, dig in a little bit more than the sections above. And then finally, that checklist, which I think is a highlight of this outcome that we've got. So let's take a look here. A little bit more detail about the table of the contents of our recommended practice. And this is a draft still, so don't think this is exactly what it's going to look like. But in each of these subsections, there's a summary and then a discussion of the relevant topics. Some of them need more discussion than others. And then they each conclude with recommendations and responsibilities that identify who is sort of the owner of those responsibilities. And then we took those recommendations and we turned them into a checklist. And you may think of a checklist as, okay, I've got a PDF and I put a check mark. It's a list of items. This is actually a spreadsheet. So it's got column headers for phase, activity type, primary stakeholder, auxiliary stakeholder, and then the actual recommended task or thing to accomplish. They are, you probably can't see it too well, but there's little filter options. So you'll be able to filter these to say, this is what I want to focus on. I just need to see the pre-migration stuff. Or for instance, I could say, this is the immediate post-launch things dealing with access that librarians should think or do. So it's 3 items that I need to say, okay, someone needs to go and verify that our authentication still works. Someone needs to make sure that we still have access to the entitlements that we thought we should have access to. And here is an example for publishers. That's a pre-migration dealing with metadata. So these are some recommended things that a publisher might think about. And we, of course, then you could filter for the different stakeholders or phases and so forth. You can then transfer this into any format that you want. So I think that checklist is going to be very valuable for people planning and customizing this recommended practice for their situation and their workers. That's what we hope. So the next phase is we have the draft almost done, but it needs to be finalized and put into format that can be then approved to go out for public comment. And I hope that public comment period will catch your all's attention and that you'll take a look, because there's certainly things that could be improved. I am confident there's stuff that we've worded in a confusing way, maybe things that we forgot. And we want to know about those so that we can make this the best tool possible for people. Once the public comment period is done, hopefully we can get an approval, and then there may be some ongoing maintenance. And this is, I think Nettie could give you all the details of what all of these things involve, so I'm not even going to try and dig in anymore. But I do want to point out this has been going on for a while. We've done a few presentations. I've linked down to the content platform migration working group page as it exists right now. And then also one of our earlier presentations about this. I believe that you would be able to go and watch it. There's been several. You maybe even seen one of our presentations at one of the other events, but we've tried to reach out and get the word out so that people will be interested and give us feedback and use this tool once it's available. And that's it from me.
Awesome, Athena. Thank you so much. That was a whirlwind tour. And there was questions about when is it out? When is it coming out? And I'll be honest, it's in my lap right now. Athena and her co-chair Kim finished their last checklist of stuff on Monday, I think. Yesterday.
Yeah,
what is today? Today's Tuesday.
Right
Sunday. Sunday night I got it in my email, so it's in my inbox. And I said I'm not sure how much time this week, but we do have breaks coming up this afternoon, so maybe I'll be motivated to move it along a little bit. So it should be out for public comment very soon.